Hey, how is everybody? My name is Al. Welcome to Dark Side Reviews, and today we are going to have a spoiler-free discussion about the first season of Netflix, The Witcher. So this by far is my most anticipated show of the year. I could not wait because of the potential of what The Witcher can be. And let me just say this, that I'm telling you, this first season is absolutely amazing. It's fantastic. Does it have some problems? Yes, it does. And we'll touch on those. But on the whole, this is amazing. And I think that this will be what I suspect Netflix wants it to be, is number one, a show that will grab the Game of Thrones fans, but also a show that will compete with the coming Lord of the Rings show on Amazon Prime. And I think Netflix is in the house. They are in the game because this is fantastic. Let's start with the performances. So first, I'm not even going to start with Cavill's performance. I'm actually going to start with Anna Shalata's performance as Yennefer, and she's fantastic. She is fantastic. And the way that this first season gives us her story and how she transitions to the sorceress that we know her to be from the books is absolutely portrayed in such a way that you're satisfied. If you're a fan of the books as the source material and you were wondering how this was going to come across, how they were going to make this book to TV adaptation, they do a fabulous job. We learn a lot about her. We learn how she came to be as she is, but we also learn how she became to be a bit ambiguous in terms of whether or not she really is a good or bad character. All of that is portrayed to us in a very convincing and engaging way. Now, if we hop to Cavill's character as Geralt of Rivia, he does a great job of that as well. And I wasn't super worried about that. People were worried about it. But here's the thing. Like for me, if I know an actor takes a role and he or she is a fan of the source material, then I automatically assume that their performance is going to be good because they care, right, about the role. It's not just about a good role. It's not just about a paycheck or a payday. They genuinely care about the material. And I know that Cavill is a fan of the games and the books, and he is an amazing Geralt. He has the grit of Geralt, he has the emotional regulation of Geralt, but he also has the inner angst and turmoil of who he is or what he is as a Witcher. He brings the Witcher to life in a very, very convincing way on screen. And every time he's on screen, you are really pulled into the scenario, or you're pulled into the story. All the characters are like that. Queen Calanthe, Ciri, Brigila, Jasker, who, by the way, is Dandelion, and that is how you pronounce it, not Dandelion, but Dandelion, Jasker. They've replaced the name Dandelion with Jasker. I don't know why, but I was just so happy to see him in the show because when I was seeing the promos for the show, I'm thinking, wait. Like I'm looking around. Where's Dandelion? And I hadn't seen it. And then my buddy Jen Han said that Jasker is replacing the role of Dandelion. So essentially he's Dandelion's character in the show. And he's great too. And you love Dandelion because Dandelion is kind of the counterbalance to Geralt, kind of softens Geralt. So we needed that character in the show, and we do have him in the show, only he's in the show under Jasker. The fact that we get to visit so many different locations in this first season is absolutely amazing. I mean, we get to visit the Tower of Gulls, we get to visit Brokilon Forest, we get to visit, oh man, I can't think. I think we visited Nilfgaard, I can't remember. We visited Sintra, so we get to visit all of these different locations, and we also come in contact with a lot of the different kind of highlighted monster sequences or highlighted monster encounters from the books as well. We have an encounter with Striga. There's an encounter with a Kikamora. I think that was a Kikamora. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the comments about that. You know what scene I'm talking about. I'm not going to say any more because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But so we get to see the encounter with all these different monsters. So we get to see all that we love about The Witcher in this first season. Now let me say something here so that you kind of get an idea of what The Witcher is about if you're not that familiar with the source material, meaning the book, or to some extent the video game. The Witcher is very much about characters. It is very much a character-central story, and it centers around the character of Geralt of Rivia as the Witcher, but also a lot of those characters that kind of join him in the story, and I don't even want to call them side characters because they're much more than that. They're really important and kind of central to the story as a whole, even though they may not be the feature like Geralt is. So when we're talking about Yennefer and all of the different Ciri and Calanthe and all those other different characters that we see in the show, the show spends a lot of time developing those characters because they want us to feel connected to those characters, because the broader story of The Witcher has a lot to do with what's going on with individual characters, but also how they interact with the broader world, how they interact with kind of the political different intentions that's going on within the different kingdoms, how they interact with the different individuals, the sorcerers, the mutants, all of those different dynamics, how they interact with the struggle for power and for being and self-discovery. All those things are part of what The Witcher is about. And when they tell that story holistically, it is what makes The Witcher such a good work, because it's much more than just about slaying magical creatures or slinging around magic. There's so much involved in The Witcher storytelling, and that's why I said the potential for The Witcher to be big here is huge, because there's so much material that you have to work with within this show. It really could be Netflix's flagship show. And this first season is absolutely phenomenal. I really did enjoy virtually every part of this. Now, there was something that bothered me a little about this first season, and I want to mention it because it's going to seem kind of odd, and it's a little bit counter to what maybe some of the other folks have said that have reviewed this or having discussions about this. Sorry, I'm excited you guys know it. So, and that is the use of CGI here. So here is the thing. It's interesting because a lot of the effects in this show are practical effects. And for those who don't know what that means, that is to say that they're not using computer-generated effects. It's mostly makeup and things like that. And it lands pretty well. But there are some parts in this show, I'm not going to say what they are, again, this is spoiler-free, where we should have used CGI because they were kind of too grand to pull off with practical effects. And CGI would have been much better placed, and the fact that they didn't use CGI in some of these places, I think kind of hurts the impact of some of what we see in the show. And when we have our spoiler-free discussion, we'll get into all of that detail by detail. So there were some places, oddly enough, where they should have used CGI and they didn't, and then most places they went for practical effects. And normally practical effects are great because they look and they feel real. They're much more connected. It's kind of like when you think about the practical experience or the feeling you have with the Yoda of the original 3 Star Wars versus the CGI Yoda of the Star Wars to come after that, the movies to come after that. He doesn't feel as connected. He doesn't feel as tactile. There's something about that physical effect that connects us to the character. And The Witcher, I think, realizes this, so we have a lot of practical effects when we're looking at some of the things that are quote-unquote special effects in the movie. Let's talk about the sword play. Sweet mercy. Can I tell you the fight choreography is fantastic. The fight choreo is man. And it has to be the case that Cavill was doing a lot of the stunt work. If I'm wrong about that, someone please set me straight in the comments, because you can tell a good fight sequence by the camera work, really, most of the time. If the fight sequence is, number one, not shrouded in darkness, or there are not tons and tons of cut scenes to the point where you almost can't tell what's going on, you know that for the most part, an actor is probably performing most of those stunts. And if that's not the case with Cavill, I'd be surprised, but I could be wrong, but I'm almost certain he is performing most of these stunts. And that is because of the fluidity of the fight scenes, and they are fantastic. And when I tell you they are raw and visceral, they are raw and visceral. They are, if not on the scale of Game of Thrones, beyond the scale of Game of Thrones, because they are nasty mean. And it is perfect what you get with that, because the primary mean of combat is by sword. And if you want to see it be dynamic, it's got to be raw, it's got to be visceral, and Geralt does an amazing job with that as well. It is really, really well crafted with the fight choreography. I also found it just cinematically very beautiful. I thought that it was so well crafted how they built the world of The Witcher. It felt very immersive. It was easy to get into this first season and really feel connected to what's going on. Now, that said, I want to make a comment about something, because some folks have said that the first couple of episodes seem a little bit slow, and honestly, I can see that. Now, it didn't feel that way to me, but I'm a big fan of the source material, so I kind of appreciated the slow build and the kind of deeper look, or the gazing look at the different characters as they were developing, and kind of we were just building the set or the scenario or the world of The Witcher as we were going along. It does pick up after, I would say, probably 3 or 4. So if you stop watching after episode 1 and thinking, I can't take this, is too slow, no, click it back on and keep on going, because it's going to pick up. And you will appreciate it more as I think the season builds for season 1 and we began to get season 2. But also do yourself a favor, go back and read the books, because I think it'll be really helpful. If you don't want to do all of them, there's like 8 of them, do The Last Wish at least, and you're going to get a nice comprehensive view of what The Witcher is like. So I thought this first season was fantastic. It was amazing. We will have spoilers to come for this. As a matter of fact, we might go live with a spoiler talk or discussion just dedicated to The Witcher, so that we can get into it, because man, it's fantastic. I mean, boom, home run Netflix has with this, because it is really, really good. Finally, I'll say this. If you are a high fantasy fan, then you're going to love The Witcher, because The Witcher actually really ups that ante much more than Game of Thrones did. Game of Thrones was a fantasy, but it wasn't really high fantasy. I've said before, we had some magic elements in it. Melisandre, the White Walkers, the Night King, all that kind of good stuff. So we had some magical elements in it, but it wasn't necessarily classified, in my opinion, as high fantasy. We had direwolves in it, but The Witcher has all the elements of high fantasy that you can love. So if you're a big fan of high fantasy like me, fantasy is my favorite genre of all time, then I think you're really, really going to appreciate The Witcher from so many different aspects, just from what it gives us visually, to the storytelling, to the performances, to the character development, and the intrigue of all that's going on within the world of The Witcher. And The Witcher world is expansive. It's hugely expansive. It is massively expansive. Now, make sure that you go here and check out my ranking for the top 10 shows of 2019, of which The Witcher is on that list, and let me know what you think about it. All right, guys, make sure you subscribe if you're new here as well, because we're going to dig deep into this series. Super excited about it. Got to know what you think. See you guys on the next video. Peace.